Pace is not the silence after war, it is the art of restraint. The ability to stand before chaos and not be consumed by it. In August, Algeria severed its ties with Morocco. The accusations came in waves, some logical, others paranoid. But beneath the noise lies an older story, a wound that refuses to close. For more than 60 years, two neighbors, bound by geography and blood, have chosen rivalry over unity. Since 1994, their shared border has remained locked, a scar across North Africa's map. Tens of billions have been spent on tanks, on jets, on the illusion of supremacy, yet neither side has gained ground. Both remain prisoners of their own reflection. Now, as airspace closures and pipeline shutdowns are discussed, armies move closer to the frontier. The air thickens. Conflict seems inevitable. But war is always a choice. Before we begin, remember, information is not truth, it's a signal buried under noise. Subscribe to BlackSignal and learn to hear what others can't. At first glance, Morocco and Algeria appear almost identical, two mirrors of the same identity: Arab, Berber, Muslim. Both marked by French influence, both shaped by the winds of the Maghreb. In the 1960s, it was easy to imagine them united, the twin flames of African independence. But dreams fade when ideology divides. Morocco embraced monarchy, Algeria, revolution, and the two visions collided. Their rivalry began not in the 20th century, but in the shadow of empire. When France conquered Algeria in 1830, Morocco rose against it and paid the price. Defeat came swift, and France carved away pieces of Moroccan land, claiming the borderlands of Béchar and Tindouf. These territories, barren, mineral-rich, undefined, were handed to colonial Algeria. Lines on maps were drawn in pencil, never in ink. And as always, the future would inherit the ambiguity of the past. When gold and minerals were discovered a century later, France quietly transferred the regions to Algerian sovereignty. The seeds of conflict were already buried beneath the sand. In 1957, France offered to return the lands, but only if Morocco agreed to share the spoils. Rabat refused. The Algerian Revolution was raging, and Morocco refused any deal with the colonizer. A promise was made instead, to settle borders once Algeria was free. But when independence came in 1962, exhaustion replaced gratitude. Too much blood had been spilled. Too many ghosts whispered from the battlefields. Algeria's new leaders refused to yield an inch. The talks collapsed. Suspicion replaced trust. And within a year, soldiers faced each other in the desert. The Sand War, a brief, bitter conflict. No victor, no closure. From that point on, mistrust became doctrine. Morocco turned to the west, embracing continuity and monarchy. Algeria turned inward, shaped by its trauma, radicalized by its revolution, drawn to the orbit of Moscow. Two nations, two destinies, two ideologies locked in opposite directions. Then came 1975. Spain abandoned Western Sahara, a vast, windswept land the size of the United Kingdom. Morocco moved in, backed by hundreds of thousands of civilians in the Green March. Spain retreated. The world looked away, and the Sahrawi people were left voiceless, trapped between flags. For Algeria, Western Sahara offered something deeper than solidarity. It offered the Atlantic, a strategic escape from the Strait of Gibraltar, a door to the ocean. It was a prize too valuable to ignore. As Morocco annexed the territory, Algeria moved in the shadows. It armed the Polisario Front, a Sahrawi militia that would bleed Morocco for decades. From Algerian soil, they launched attacks across the dunes. Years turned into decades. By 1991, Morocco controlled 85% of Western Sahara, separated from the rest by a 2,700-kilometer wall of sand and silence. A ceasefire froze the conflict, but not the hatred. Trust had evaporated. Diplomacy became performance. Then, as Algeria descended into civil war in the 1990s, the borders closed, this time for good. Each side blamed the other for fueling the fire, and both sank deeper into the paranoia of perpetual defense. Since 1994, two of Africa's most dynamic economies have isolated themselves, walling off trade, opportunity, and progress. In their place, they built arsenals, Morocco filled its skies with F-16s, its deserts with Abrams tanks, its orbit with satellites. Between 2005 and 2015, it spent $48 billion on defense. Then came another $20 billion in 2020, an obsession disguised as security. Algeria responded with its own show of force. Submarines, frigates, Sukhoi jets, $58 billion in 10 years. A mirror escalation. Neither is safer. Both are armed to the teeth. Weapons built for deterrence now serve only pride. Every missile bought is a hospital unbuilt. Every jet fueled is a school unfunded. Each new battalion consumes a dream that could have been. The arms race has crippled the Maghreb's potential. The land that once promised unity now bleeds resources into the desert wind. What could have been roads became borders. What could have been progress became paranoia. And yet both nations keep feeding the machine. Even as oil prices fall, even as economies tremble, the obsession continues because rivalry is easier to maintain than reconciliation. In Rabat, Morocco looked outward. It normalized relations with Israel, and in return, Washington recognized its sovereignty over Western Sahara, a strategic gamble cloaked in diplomacy. In Algiers, power aged and decayed. A regime ruled by ghosts of the revolution clung to authority as the people took to the streets. Bouteflika resigned, but nothing truly changed. Elections without trust, a nation restless and disillusioned. Years of austerity starved public life. In the Kabyle region, resentment grew into rebellion. Old identities resurfaced, proud, defiant, Berber. And soon sparks turned into flames. The Kabyle Mountains, fierce, ancient, untamed. In August, wildfires consumed their forests. The government blamed separatists. The separatists blamed neglect. Some whispered of arson, others of silence too deep to be natural. 30 soldiers died fighting the flames. But what burned was more than wood. It was trust. The regime called the Kabyle groups terrorists. And soon the fires of nature were joined by the fires of politics. Then came the accusation that Morocco had aided the separatists, that the kingdom was conspiring to ignite Algeria from within. Rabat denied it, but the words were enough. In diplomacy, perception is the weapon. And Algiers pulled the trigger, cutting ties once more. 60 years of rivalry, 60 years of lost chances. Together, Algeria and Morocco hold the population of Germany and the resources to match. Oil, gas, phosphates, coasts, sunlight, enough to transform a continent. Yet both remain trapped in the lower ranks of global wealth. 125th and 109th in GDP per capita, not for lack of potential, but for lack of unity. The Cold War ended, but its ghosts remain, in speeches, in maps, in military budgets. Foreign powers thrive where neighbors mistrust. Contracts go to Washington, Riyadh, Tehran, Paris. The Maghreb's arteries point outward, never inward. Trade across the desert is still a dream deferred. Now Algeria threatens to close the skies, to shut pipelines that cross Moroccan soil, to move troops closer to the border once again. None of these gestures will shift the balance of power, but they will feed the illusion that the enemy is always across the line, never within. Colonial borders, ideological scars, centuries of pride and paranoia. The ledger of grievance is long and written in both languages. Attempts at peace have been made, only to falter under the weight of memory, because some wounds never close. They pulse beneath the surface, waiting for the next word, the next spark. This is not just a rivalry, it is a tragedy written in sand and silence. And until both nations learn that strength is not in defiance, but in recognition, the desert will keep its secrets. If this signal reached you, don't let it fade. Subscribe. Because what comes next, they won't tell you about it. But we will. This is BlackSignal.